Yo everyone, what's up? It's me Anjali and we're going to continue. Okay. Hello everybody, it's me Anjali. Now I'm going to continue reading this book. Yeah, The House at Riverton. Okay, let's go. The title is Saffron High Street. The rain is on its way. My lower back is far more sensitive than any meteorologist's equipment, and last night I lay awake bone morning to bone, whispering tales of long ago littleness. I arch and both my stiff old frame. Nuisance become frustrations, frustrations become boredom, and boredom become terror. Terror that the night would never end, and I would be trapped forever in its long, lonely tunnel. But enough. I refuse to ruminate further on my frailties, and I must eventually have slept. For this morning I woke, and as far as I can tell, the one cannot be done without the other. I was still in my bed. My nightie twist about my middle when a girl with roll-up shirt sleeves and a long thin plait bustled into my room and threw open the curtains, letting the light stream in. The girl was not Sylvia, and thus I knew it must be Sunday. The girl Helen, read her name badge, bundled me into the shower, gripping my arm to steady me. Mulberry fingernails burrowing into flashed white skin. She flicked her plate over one shoulder and set about soaping my torso and limbs, scrubbing away the lingering film of night, humming a tune I did not know. When I was suitably sanitary, she lowered me onto the plastic bedseat and left me alone to soak beneath the shower's warm curls. I clutched the lower rail with both hands and eased forward, sighing as the water ran relief over my knot back. With Helen's assistance, I was dried and dressed, thoroughly processed, and seated in the morning room by 7:30. I managed a piece of rhubarb toast and a cup of tea before Ruth arrived to take me to church. I'm not overly religious. Indeed, there have been times when all faith has deserted me, but I made my peace with God a long time ago. Age is the great mellower, and besides, Ruth likes to go, and it is small enough gesture for me to make. It is Lent, the period of searching and repentance that always precedes Easter, and this morning the church pulpit was draped in purple. The sermon was pleasant enough, its subject guilt and forgiveness. The minister read from John 14, beseeching the congregations to resist the scaremongers who preach millennial doom and to find instead an inner peace through Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life, he read. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And then he bid us take our example from the faith of Christ's apostles at the dawn of the first millennium, with the exceptions of Judas, of course. It is our habit after church to walk the short distance to the high street for morning tea at Maggie's. We always go to Maggie's. Tough Maggie herself left town with a suitcase and her best friend husband many years ago. We rest for a moment on the timber seat beneath the 100-year elm whose mammoth trunks from the junction of Church and Saffron High Street. The wintry sun flickered through the last work of naked brains towing my back. Strange these clear, bright days in winter's tale when one can be hot and cool all at once. When I was a girl, horse and carriage and hansom cabs rode along this street. Motor cars too. After the war Austins and tin Lizzies with their goggle-eyed drivers and honking horns. The roads were dusty then, full of fotolers and horse manure. Old ladies, push-spoke-wheeled perambulators, and little boys with empty eyes sold newspapers out of boxes. The salt cellar always set up on the corner where the petrol station is now. Vera Pip, a wiry figure in a cloth cap, thin clay pipe permanently hanging off her lip. I used to hide behind Mother's skirt, watching big-eyed as Mrs. Pip used a big hook to heave slabs of salt onto her handcraft. Then a saw and knife to carve them into small pieces. She turned up in many a nightmare, with her clay pipe and shiny hook. Ruth tapped my arm and hoisted me to my feet, and we set off again down Saffron High Street towards the faded red and white canvas awning of Maggie's. We ordered the usual 2 cups of English breakfast tea and a scone to share and sat at the table by the window. I considered reminding her of Mrs. Simpson's advice that a woman can never be too rich or too thin, but thought better of it. Her sense of humor, never abandoned, had all but deserted of her late. Ruth tapped at her mouth, casting an invisible crumb across her lip. Then cleared her throat, folding the napkin in half and in half again, and tucking it under her knife. "I need a prescription dispensed at the chemist," she said. "Are you happy to sit?" "A prescription?" I said. "Why, what's the matter?" "She is in her 60s, the mother of a grown man, and still my heart skipped." "Nothing," she said. "Not really." She stood stiffly, then said in a low voice, "Just a little something to help me sleep." I nodded. We both know why she doesn't sleep. It sits between us, a shared sadness tied up neatly by our unspoken agreement not to discuss it or him. Ruth rushed on, filling the silence. "You stay here while I test across. It's warm with the heating on." She gathered her handbag and coat and stood, considering me for a second. "Don't you go wandering now, will you?" I shook my head as she hurried to the door. It is Ruth's abiding fear that I will disappear if left alone. I wonder where it is she imagines I am so eager to go. Through the window, I watched until she vanished amid the people rushing past, all different shapes and sizes. And what clothes! What would Mr. Thompson have said? A pink-cheeked child wandering by, muffled up like a blind dragging behind a busy parent. The child, he or she, it was difficult to tell, regarded me with large round eyes, bounded by none of the social compulsion to smile that afflicts most adults. Memory flashed. I was that child once long ago, lagging behind my own mother, and as she hurried along the street. The memory brightened. We had walked by this very shop, although it hadn't been a cafe then, but a butcher's. Ranks of cut meat on white marble slabs lined the window, and beef carcasses swayed over the swollen strand floor. Mr. Hobbins, the butcher, had waved at me, and I remembering wishing Mother would stop, that we would take home with us a lovely ham hook to turn into soup. I lingering by the window, hoping, imagining the soup. ham, leg, and potato bubbling atop our wood stove, filling our tiny kitchen with its salty film of steam. So, 5 feet was my imagining I could smell the broth so that it almost hurt. I was told the story of my escape from the fondling orphanage so many times I sometimes believe I was born knowing it. Mother's train journey to Russell Square in London with me wrapped and tucked within her coat for warmth had become for us a legend of sorts. The walk down Greenfield Street and into Guildford Street, folks hacking their heads, knowing full well where she was headed with her tiny parcel. The way she'd recognized the Fondling building from far up the street by the crowd of other young women like herself who milled about outside, swaying desert lightly, with their mowing babes, then most important than sudden voice clear as day, telling her to turn around, that it was her duty to keep her wee baby. The moment, according to family law, for which I should be eternally grateful. On that morning, the day of the button and the string bag, Mother's mention of the Fondling Hospital moved me to silence. Tough not as she doubtless believed, because I was reflecting on my good fortune at having been spared its confinement. Rather, I was drifting along the well-trod path of a favorite childhood fantasy. It cheered me no end to imagine myself at Coram's Fondling Hospital, singing away amongst the other children. I should have had lots of brothers and sisters with whom to play then, not just a tired and cranky mother whose face was lined with disappointment, one of which I feared was me. I'm watching the sun set over the head. I like to follow its path as it slips silently behind the far off band of trees. Today, I blink and miss its last farewell. When my eyes open, the ultimate moment has passed and the shimmering crescent has disappeared, leaving the sky bereaved, a clear, cool blue lacerated by streaks of fuzzy white. The heat itself shivers in the sudden shadow, and in the distance a train sneaks through the valley fog. Electric breaks moaning as it turns towards the village. I glance at my wall clock. It is the 6 o'clock train, filled with people returning from work in Chelmsford and Brentwood and even London. I see the stations in my mind, not as it is, perhaps, but as it was. The big round station clock suspended over the platform, its steadfast face and diligent hands a stern reminder that the time and the trains wait for no man. It has probably been replaced now with a blinking digital device. I wouldn't know. It has been a long time since I visited the stations. I see it as it was the morning we waved off to work. String of paper strangles red and blue, flittering with the breeze, children racing up and down, weaving in and out, blowing tin whistles and waving onion checks. Young men, such as an eager in their new uniforms and clean boots, and sneaked along the track, the glistening train, anxious to be on its way, to spirit its unsuspecting passenger to a hell of mud and death. But enough of that. I jumped too far ahead.